Hello. Good morning. Good morning. One quick piece of housekeeping before we start. In the event of an emergency, please follow these instructions to exit the auditoriums. We have a few exits located in various places. At the entrance to the auditorium, the glass doors will take you out to Clinton Street. That's right in back. To my strict left, there's a set of doors, and behind them is a set of double metal doors that will take you out to Ellicott Street. And then from the lobby to my right is a staircase that will bring you to Washington Street, and that's also back towards the back of the auditorium. So I'm John Spears. I'm the director of the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library, and I'm very pleased to actually welcome all of you here for today's event. I want to start off by thanking the Library Foundation of Buffalo and Erie County, and then the library's development and communication staff. And I want to call a few of them out, actually, because they deserve recognition for the work that they put into this. Joy Testa-Cinquino, Darlene Panacci, Melissa Burgess, Ann Conable, and Maureen Germain. Thank you to all of them for the work that they put into making today's event such a success. Now, I'm especially pleased that we're bringing this program here to Central today. Jackie's book and this program are really a wonderful representation of what libraries are about and what they need to be about. Libraries are about people exploring, are about people discovering, and often that can be discovering the community, it can be discovering the world. The best thing happens is when they discover themselves, and when they examine who they are, when they examine their own beliefs. I had the pleasure of listening to Jackie yesterday at an event she did, and I can tell you that it was a challenging conversation and it was a challenging presentation for me to be in, but it was one that was incredibly worthwhile. Jackie managed to position the work around diversity, equity, and inclusion to include anti-racism. All too often when we have conversations around this, we can fall back on it being about the collective. And what Jackie made me realize once again is that the collective work is only going to be done if we're willing to do individual work as well. If we're willing to challenge ourselves, if we're willing to put ourselves in other people's lives, if we're willing to inhabit that difficult space, the space that we don't normally belong to, but yet if we're going to function as a society, we need to be able to understand. That's for you, not me. So, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of this library's efforts in this arena. This is not going to be the last thing like this that we do. It hasn't been the first. Hopefully it'll be one of many. So now, I want to introduce Kimberly Johnson. She's the current chair of the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library Board of Directors. And I want to thank Kimberly for her passion in bringing Jackie here, for her passion for her book, and for this important issue that is at the forefront, I think, of us as a people and as a society. I know that she's planning several more community programs for next year, and we're really looking forward to those. So I hope that everyone in this room gets as much out of this as I got out of yesterday. This is just the beginning, but it's a path that I think Buffalo needs to take, and it's one that we're going to take together. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Well, it's kind of a little early before you, but thank you for coming out, and thank you for wanting to be a part of what I feel is something that needs to be spoken about. It's a conversation with an author, but it's a conversation about an issue, a topic that is very uncomfortable. It may not be uncomfortable for people like me that look like me, because we have the conversation on a regular basis. But when you get into a diverse room, that conversation gets to be thick. People getting their feelings about it. And what I'm going to ask you to do is just be open. Open to receive the message. Heed the message, not the messenger. Understand that someone is speaking from a place of experience. Not just having read a book about it, but having experienced it. We're going to begin our program today. And before we do that, I want to tell you about hush money and how I came about hush money. Hush Money is a book written by this beautiful woman, my new sister, Jacquie Abram. Jacquie Abram experienced some things, and I'm going to take a word from you. Hush money tells you what it is. It's hush money. Somebody proves systemic racism in their workplace and kept their job. And some hush money was paid for that. Okay? What we're going to do today is we're going to explore this topic. We're going to talk about this topic. What I want to give you a little bit of how it came about. So, this topic came to me from my travels through being with the library. I started doing author talks back in January. I became chair of the board, as John told you. And my sister wrote a book, and I wanted to do a book signing. And so the staff and administration of the library is really amazing. They make you feel like you can do anything, okay? And so I said I wanted to do a author talk or a book signing, just a table, a chair, some books, and she signed, okay? But it turned into something different, and then I liked it. And then, as that one was progressing, a friend, a coworker told me about another author, local author, who is no longer living in Buffalo, but she had wrote a book about the Juneteenth. And it was called The Juneteenth Story. And if you are from Buffalo, you know that our Juneteenth used to be on Jefferson, and it was everything when I was growing up. And so as I read the book, it's a children's book. But as I read that book, I found that there was a lot of information in there for not only children, but adults. So as the child was being read the book, the adult was also learning. So that was my next one. And then 514 happened. And during 514, I thought that maybe that wouldn't go off, that maybe we shouldn't do it, maybe it would be disrespectful, but then at the same time, I felt like, yes, it must happen. Because there is a light being shined on Buffalo right now. Then in walks Reverend Blue. And Reverend Blue asked me if I would serve on the steering committee for the TOPS 514 shooting, and asked if I would be a member of the board for the funds that was raised. And I was honored. I said yes. And I told him about my work here at the library and about doing author talks. And he told me, I should connect you with this lady. She sent me an email. Her name is Jacquie. I'm going to send it to you. He sent me the email. I read it. I immediately went to Amazon and got the book. I read the book and listened to the book on Audible, and I listened to this book about 4 times. And I was like, oh yeah, we've got to do this. And then I sent her an email. And she came back like almost right away. I was so shocked it was her contacting me. I just knew a book of this caliber had to have a posse behind it. It had to be a bunch of people that had wrote this and, is pushing it forward and everything. But it was her. It was all her. And so I'm going to get ready to start my program because I can talk. And I like to talk. But before I do so, I want to just ask everyone just to stand, and we're going to have the African American National Anthem. Another thing that I would like to do is a moment of silence. As I told you, 514 has rocked Buffalo. And we cannot go on without remembering. I want to acknowledge those who lost their lives, those that remain. And I just want to encourage everyone to keep them in your prayers. Keep those families in your prayers. As I say their names, can I just have a moment of silence? Celestine Channing, Andre McNeil, Catherine Massey, Marcus Morrison, Deacon Hayward Patterson, Aaron Salters, Geraldine Talley, Ruth Whitfield, Pearl Young, Roberta Drury. Remember their lives. Also, I would like for us to keep in our hearts the brave survivors. Christopher Braden, Zaire Goodman, and Jennifer Warrington. Thank you. Okay, so as I stated, I have this wonderful woman that I want to bring to you. I'm going to let her give you a bit of herself. Without further ado, Jacquie Abram.
Thank you for that marvelous introduction. I am honored and delighted to be here today, and I have so much to say, y'all. But before I do, I want to introduce you to someone who has become just very, very, very special to me. Someone that I actually met on LinkedIn after I talked to my Aunt Lou, who I haven't seen in decades, but who's sitting right here in the front row. I called her and said, you know, Aunt Lou, I want to write a book. And she said, what is this book going to be about? And I said, I need to tell what happened to me because it's tearing me up inside. And I said, can I read you some of what I wrote, Aunt Lou? And she said, honey, I don't think I can handle it because it's, you know, I know what you're about to tell me and I don't think my heart can take it. And I said, I understand because, you know, my book is triggering, so I'm not gonna make you listen to it, Aunt Lou, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and write this book. And so I wrote the book and things were going fine, but then I met a young man on LinkedIn when I decided that I wanted to come to Buffalo to not only see family that I haven't seen in, decades, you know, 5 decades, 4 decades, some of them I haven't even met. But after I heard about what happened at Tops, you know, and I'm in Colorado, I had this sick feeling in my stomach. I wanted to check on my Aunt Lou. So I called my other aunt, Perlene, and I said, is Aunt Lou okay? She wasn't at Tops, was she? And she said, I don't know. She's grocery shopping. And the fear that I felt that day was overwhelming because Aunt Lou is the sister of my mom. And so I wanted to come and see about my Aunt Lou, and thankfully she was nowhere near Tops, thankfully. But when I got that sick feeling, I wanted to come and see about the other people in Buffalo. You know, those who had loved ones at Tops. And so I made it known through my followers that I was planning on coming to Buffalo. And there was a young man who reached out to me and he said, I heard you're coming to Buffalo. I want to help. I want to help you get your message out. And I said, okay, well, I'm always interested in having help. You know, what's your name? And he said, Mark Talley. And I said, okay, Mark, what would you like to do? How can you help? And he said, well, I don't know if you know me, but, you know, my mom was killed at Tops when she was shopping for groceries. And I cannot tell you the feeling that came over me. It was like a surreal moment. I couldn't believe that I was chatting back and forth with someone who was directly impacted by what happened at Tops, and it just reinforced my desire to come out here and see about Buffalo. You know, you've heard that song, Come See About Me. I wanted to come and see about Buffalo. And so before I tell you my story, I just want to give a warm introduction to Mark. Mark Talley, will you come up here and just introduce yourself and say a little bit about what you're doing?
Thank you, Jackie. First, I kind of want another round of applause for myself because I'm really not used to wearing penny loafers. I slipped the first time I walked up here. Half an hour ago, nobody saw it, so I was holding on to that rail extra tight. Secondly, I told Jackie before I don't like speaking at her because she's smooth with it. She's nice. Me, I'm more of a rough speaker. So you're gonna feel my tone, emotion, you know, possibly mistakes with me talking. Thirdly, Kimberly said her and Jackie, they're sisters. They're like sisters. I'm more of the young, aggressive, no filter little brother. So around when I contacted Jackie, I was going through the pain and trauma of everything, dealing with the loss of my mother. You know, you see your mom get shot on the side of the head, it kind of changes your personality. Since then, I was already kind of a less emotional, cold person, aggressive. People call me narcissistic. I don't agree, but people have their own opinions of you. Since then, I can say I've definitely become more colder, more nonchalant, for better or worse. So when I contacted Jacquie, I didn't know who she was at the time, and she told me the trials and tribulations and pain that she went through dealing with racism in her workplace, while I was going with the trauma of losing my mother. And we instantly clicked. And I tell my wife all the time, we just clicked like a do-rag and waves. It was a perfect connection. And I think we clicked because we both, although different circumstances and levels of trauma, we both went through the same thing. You know, I can't tell you even to this day, people coming up to you, the first thing they say is, "Sorry for your loss, hope you're doing good." And I know it's coming from a place of sorrow and sympathy, and they definitely want to show you that they sympathize and empathize with your pain, and it's nothing but love. But you know, you hear it 1,000 times. You eventually start becoming numb to it. You eventually start becoming resentful, wanting to snap on the first person who you see that says this. And I could only imagine that's how, on her book, Esther felt dealing with racism. You know, as Black people, when you deal with racism continuously, it becomes a heavy burden, it becomes tiresome. You know, constantly having to look over your back, worrying, is this my white ally, my white friend, or is this a person who's talking behind my back, saying racist things when I'm not in the area? It becomes tiresome. As with me, it becomes tiresome. People telling you, you know, I hope you're doing better, I hope you're feeling good. Eventually you just get tired of having to deal with it. And with the anger also that comes with it, you know, dealing with, you know, racists in your workplace in a hostile environment, it can eventually want to make you hurt somebody, want to kill somebody. And that's how I felt too. You know, you constantly, when you're trying to do good and better in the community, and when you're talking to people, how they look you dead in your eye, face to face, how they reach out to you, say how much they want to help. And then when you reach back out to them, you don't hear from them. It eventually becomes so much bottled up anger. And that's why I tell Jacquie all the time, she's a lot stronger person than I am. Because instead of letting that anger manifest into possibly a dangerous situation for her, she smartly did it a better way. Now, I tell her all the time, if somebody was to talk to me how they talked to Erie in the book, I would have been going to jail too. So I was definitely glad to meet Jacquie, which led to me meeting Miss Kimberly here. Hopefully I don't get the title messed up, but Kimberly, she's the board of the chair of the foundation. And she helped me set up my organization and decided to become a chair member of Agents for Advocacy. The goal of my organization, Agents for Advocacy, is to combat racism and advocate for social justice issues while increasing the awareness of socioeconomical equity and equality. We've recently had, the past couple of months, we've had 2 events, a community barbecue and prayer across the tops on July 7th. We were able to feed close to 700 people hot dogs, hamburgers, provided them with gifts, raffles, appliances, etc. This past on August 28th, we had a back to school drive. We held it at Pastor Dwayne Jones Church, Mount Aaron Missionary Baptist Church. We were able to supply close to 500 children book bags, pens, pencils, binders, notebooks, calculators, all the school supplies you can see in a store. We were able to supply the children with that. And our next event coming up will be our Thanksgiving drive. It'll be directly on Thanksgiving Day. We'll be having it at 2 locations. The first location will be at Friends of the Night People, and the second location will be at Frankie E. Merriweather Church. We're going to be. My apologies. You see, I'm not a speaker, as you can see. I told you I would mess up here. Frankie Merriweather Library. We're going to be collecting a bunch of clothes for individuals that's in need. Sweatpants, pants, hoodies, shirts, socks, underwear. And we're also going to be supplying close to 600 hot meals in the whole area.
Amen.
So I thank you all so much. I hope you'll be committed to me as I'm going to be committed to you. Feel free to look us up online, agentsforadvocacy.org, and our Instagram at Agents for Advocacy. So I'm not much of a big talker. I can't talk all day. My mouth will get too dry, no water. So I'm going to just step away from the podium. Thank you so much.
So, Jackie, I'm going to ask you to have a seat, because I have something I want to present you with. I'm going to ask, I have a representative from the mayor's office. Ms. Thompson, can you come forward, please? She always flies. She always flies.
Thanks, Mark, for the warning about the steps over here. On behalf of Mayor Byron Brown, I'm Chantel Thompson, the Chief Diversity Officer for the City of Buffalo, and we just want to present you with this certificate of recognition to thank you for your work that you're doing to fight racism in corporate America. We appreciate you and we support you, so thank you so much.
Also, I have with us Common Council member Ulysses Wingo. Can you come forward, please?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everybody. How's everyone feeling today? I am Ulysses Wingo Sr., and I represent the Maston District in the City of Buffalo's Common Council. We are the best district in the city, should I say that? It should be so nice to say. But I do represent a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful collection of citizens here in the City of Buffalo. And I am pleased and privileged that they've allowed me to serve these last 7 years, my goodness. One of the things that we can do in the Common Council is affix the gold seal of the City of Buffalo to documents that represent some type of encomium for some individuals who have done some great work in the City of Buffalo. Well, today I don't have that document because it's still in my office somewhere. My staff tried to tell me where it was, I couldn't find it, but I do have a picture of it on my phone, so if you don't mind, let me just read just a piece of it, and then I'll explain why I'm reading this one piece. This proclamation says, Jacquie Abram removed herself from corporate America and began writing books inspired by events from her corporate experiences, co-authored by her daughters. Today, as I took my wife and I's comforter to the laundromat, I put the comforter in the washer and I hit the button so that it could begin its cycle. And I sat down in my chair and I began reading the book of Esther. Hello, somebody. Esther was the savior of the Jews from an evil man by the name of Haman. Esther was also raised by her cousin Mordecai. Mordecai saved the king's life because a few of his soldiers were planning to kill him. So Xerxes had Mordecai promoted because of his courage in ensuring that he saved his life and made sure that he got the word. Well, this person, Haman, found out that Mordecai did not bow to him when he walked in the room. But because Haman wasn't going to be bothered with just one Jew, he wanted to wipe out all the Jews. So because Esther was a Jew, Mordecai made sure that Esther did not tell anyone else that she was a Jew because the Jews were hated at that time. Long story short, if you ever approached the king, you first had to be invited in his chambers. Hello, somebody. The only way you would not die is if he extended his gold scepter towards you and invited you in. When Mordecai told Esther what she needed to do to save the people, Esther's response was, I'm going to go see the king. And if I perish, let me perish. But I'm going to go see the king. The reason I'm telling you this story is because Esther approached the king with courage and boldness. And that's the kind of courage and boldness that we need in our communities. People like Jacquie Abram who are willing to leave their good-paying jobs in corporate America to represent her people before the authority, or should I say oppressor. Hello, somebody. And I am honored to be here today to represent the Common Council to express and extend this encomium to you, Jacquie, because we need more Esthers. Esther was a beautiful woman. She was a fine woman, and everyone who laid eyes on Esther just fell in love with her. She had favor with everyone, and I'm praying that, Jacquie, everywhere you go, you get favor from God.
Yes.
I'm also praying that we accept her and make sure that we extend all of our support to her. I'm going to go to Amazon and buy you a book in a few seconds. Hello. And I'm going to read that, but I'm not just going to buy it. I'm going to read it. Because from what I understand, these are Christian journals. And I really appreciate the fact that there is some God. And we need some God. I'm just, you know what? If you didn't know this, there are 3 pastors. Uh-oh. I see you pulling my coattail. There are 3 pastors on Common Council. But I just believe that we need to put a whole lot more God in things and make sure that we see Jesus in a whole lot of the things that we do moving forward. So with that being said, thank you for this opportunity to express our appreciation for all that you are doing for our community in your anti-racist movement. Thank you very much.
All right. This is how we welcome people to Buffalo, okay? We long-winded, but we get it done. We make you feel like you loved, okay? I hope you feel our love. Now show us your stuff.
I am definitely feeling a lot of love. And as you can tell, I'm a tall gal, so I need to make sure I get this adjusted. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I just want to give a very special thank you to Kimberly. I want to give a thank you to everyone who has extended such love for me. There is an amazing list of sponsors, organizations, and people who worked tirelessly to put this together. But because I want to make sure you don't forget who they are, instead of doing what I would normally do and talk about those sponsors and people up front, I'm going to save that to the end because I want their names and their organizations to be the last thing you remember and the last thing you see. Because without their efforts, this would not have been possible. So with that being said, I'm going to dive right in and I'm just going to tell you what's on my mind, okay? Okay. So we've got some jumping screen stuff going on here. They're going to come and get that fixed for me. So give me just a couple of seconds, okay?
I can feel the dead air. I'm always happy to be on the mic. When I was little, I wanted to be an entertainer. But that didn't work out because I can't sing. That gift was given to my sister. So, I just like to talk.
Well, and Kimberly, you can tell them all about the hundreds of books.
Yes, Jackie contacted us, and in her email to Reverend Blue, she said, I want to come to Buffalo. I don't know how I can help that community heal from this tragic situation, but I want to give away some of my books, and I want to give them away to the community for free. And she used all her advocates, including Agents for Advocacy, to sponsor and pay for those books. She's giving away over 200 books today. Wow. You all will receive a book when you leave here today. And if you have time to stick around, she is willing to sign those books for you as well. If you can just be patient, we got a little bite to eat for you, and we are back. Back to you, Jackie.
All right. Thank you so much. And can you still hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So, if you've noticed, I've got a breaking news story here, and I'm going to just talk to you a little bit about that. If you were active on social media 2 weeks ago, or you watched the news, or quite frankly, any of the primetime or daytime talk shows, you noticed a story that was dominating the headlines. Now, this wasn't a story covering the devastation caused by Russia's war on Ukraine. It wasn't a story, covering the extreme weather, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, the wildfires, floods wreaking havoc across the world right now. It wasn't even a news story that was covering the rising cost of food and gas that's stretching our families thin. But to many people, this story was equally as horrifying. And it had millions of people fearing that their culture, their very lives, their very being was at risk of being replaced under something they like to call replacement theory, or even worse, erased. The breaking news story that sparked outrage and anger in millions of people across the world is this.
Oh, yeah.
The trailer of the 2023 remake of Disney's The Little Mermaid, starring Halle Bailey in the leading role of Ariel. In the days that followed the release of this trailer, millions of angry people took to social media, y'all, to express their outrage in the casting of a black woman, okay, in the leading role of a character they believe should be white. On YouTube, for example, Dislikes were in the millions, causing YouTube to disable the dislike counter because it went to infinity, y'all. And remove thousands upon thousands of racist comments. And on numerous news sources like Yahoo News, reports about the racist backlash to Halle Bailey's The Little Mermaid was out of control. And even on mainstream news sources like CNN, after Disney released the first look at the remake of The Little Mermaid, the internet was sodden with wave after wave of racist critics complaining that Ariel, the fictional underwater fish woman, should not be black. Now, you may be asking yourself why this information is important to our discussion today about racism in the workplace. And honestly, the reason is really quite simple. So I want you to ask yourself a question. Of the millions of people with biases, preventing them from accepting a black woman in the leading role as a fictional fish, okay? How many of those same millions of people are leaders in your companies, in corporate America, with black employees they also cannot accept in any kind of leadership role? These are leaders in your companies, unbeknownst to you. You can't see them because they hide it well. But these are leaders who have the power, the influence, and the authority vested in them because of their positions to keep black folks at the bottom of the organizational sea. I want you to take a minute to just think about that, okay? Some people think that this scenario really isn't possible, that it simply couldn't, wouldn't, shouldn't ever happen, because in all of the organizations where y'all work, guess what? They have diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings, right? They have programs, and so the people that are in the positions of powers at the bird's eye level looking in think, well, we got this dialed in, we got this under control because we have diversity, equity, and inclusion. But let me tell you something, and I only know how to be the way that I am, so when I talk about this, I give it to you straight, no chaser. I don't sugarcoat things. Your diversity, equity, and inclusion programs do absolutely nothing. Do absolutely nothing to protect your black employees. In fact, you've got it all wrong and it leaves them more vulnerable. So, let me talk to you a little bit about what happened to me and what brought me to the point that I'm at today. Because it may surprise you to know that before I became an international best-selling and award-winning author, I didn't know the first thing about writing. I knew absolutely nothing about writing a book. In fact, I didn't want to write a book. It wasn't in my plans. I didn't want to do it. It wasn't something I ever really thought about because I had a lucrative career in higher education. You know, my background is actually in finance. I'm a number cruncher. I'm not a writer. And I knew absolutely nothing about writing a book, but I did know about doing my job. I did know how to be successful, or so I thought, in my career, because I had a career that paid me 6 figures. And you don't get to make 6 figures if you're not good at your job. It was a career that I was exceptional at and that I enjoyed. It was a career that allowed me to not only provide for my family, but to also pay my bills comfortably. It really was a career that by any measure should have been a successful career. But here's what would happen. As I would be climbing that corporate ladder, based on my skills and my abilities, someone in the organization would notice me. Maybe they weren't there when I was hired and things were going great, but they're there now. And they noticed me because of all the leaders on the leadership team. I'm the only Black leader. And this person who's noticing me is not only a leader in a higher position than mine, but they're also a racist. And when this racist notices me, he starts targeting me. And before I know it, my career is being derailed. My career is being killed. And me and that ladder that I was climbing up on, we both come crashing down. Now, the first time that happened, I'll be honest with you, I was traumatized. I was hurt, I was humiliated. But I come from a long line of beautiful, courageous, gracious women like my Aunt Lou, who didn't always want to have to be strong. Sometimes you want somebody else to be strong for you, but who had no choice. I'm a single mom, so I have to be strong because I'm mom and dad. And so you have a family you've got to feed, so you've got to pick yourself back up. You've got to try and lick your wounds, and you've got to go try again, okay? So you go to the next company after you live on the savings you had accumulated until you find your next job. And you go to that next company, and you put your game face on, you put on that fake smile, you go in there, you show them what you can do, you try to work even harder than you did before, and you're hopeful that things will go well this time. But here's the problem with that theory, y'all. You ran from this company over here because you were Black. And guess what? When you ran over here to this company, you were still Black. And so, even though you're talented, even though you're exceptional at your job, even though you're given that job everything you have to give, you may start climbing that corporate ladder, because I'm always quick to climb that corporate ladder. Okay, you may start climbing that corporate ladder again until someone in the organization, they are in a position of power, influence, and authority, they notice you again. And they do not believe you deserve that position that you hold. Okay? So they start targeting you again. And before you know it, the rug is being pulled from under you again, and you and that ladder you're climbing up on, you come crashing down again. So So in my case, by the 4th and 5th time, because racism is not a one-time thing for us, by the 4th and 5th time of having everything that I have worked for, my home, my income, my ability to provide for my family, taken from me for no other reason than because I'm Black. You start wondering if you're the problem because you're attending all these diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings that your company offers, and what they're describing racism to be is not what you're experiencing at all. They say racism is about unconscious bias. But what's happening to me is not unconscious, it's unconscionable, and they are aware of what they're doing to me. Diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and trainings in the companies where you work, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, they talk about things like microaggressions. Okay? And yes, these are things, okay, but that's not what's killing our career. The programs and the trainings don't even discuss what's really killing our career, what's really happening to us. And these programs, they may give an example of some kind of overt, easy to spot racism, but that's not what we're dealing with either, okay? What we're dealing with in the workplace is not overt. It's not easy to spot. It's actually more sinister than that, more nefarious. What's happening to Black people in your organizations is not overt. It's covert. It's hidden. And because it's hidden, it's harder to prove. And because DEI trainings have not evolved from the 1960s to address what's really going on, many of our people lose their jobs without understanding why, because it's hidden. So, because it's hidden and you can't tell if what you're experiencing is really racism, you begin thinking you're crazy. You think you're going crazy because you think what you're experiencing is racism, but when you go on the EEOC's website, none of what you're experiencing is listed. And so you begin thinking the problem is you. I thought I was going crazy. I thought the problem was me because none of what's happening to me I can easily put in a checkbox on the EEOC list of illegal harassment, illegal discrimination. But I know that it's damaging me. I know that I'm losing my job after job after job. And, to the outside world, when they look at my resume, they think I'm job hopping, but they don't realize I'm actually being targeted and my career is being killed, which is killing my job and sending me to the next one. And so, like I said, by the 4th and 5th time of losing everything, I experienced some psychological damage, y'all. I was damaged, and by the end, I decided I was going to kill my boss. And it's very serious. My boss is thankful she's still alive today. because this is a very real thought that goes through the minds of many, many Black people. We may not all admit it, but I promise you that thought has crossed our minds, and it crossed mine. And I looked at it from every angle. I'm a smart woman. I was like, okay, I'm gonna get her. I got something for you. But after I couldn't logically find a way to kill my boss, who was tormenting me and taking away my livelihood, I decided I was going to kill myself because I was done. I was just broken. I was broken. And I decided that I was going to kill myself because I just couldn't find a way to kill my boss and get away with it without it impacting my kids. But see, that's the psychological damage that we are dealt with covert racism. That's why I say it's more sinister. So, some people may not have ever heard the term covert racism, because if you notice, you never hear that in DEI trainings. Diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings, they talk about unconscious bias, they talk about microaggressions, but they never talk about covert racism, which is really what we're up against. And so many people don't even know what that is or what it looks like. So I want to just take a few moments to help you understand what that is. And if you are experiencing some turmoil in your workplace, this is what covert racism looks like. You're not going crazy. This is what's happening. What happened to me, what happens to my daughters, what happens to so many of our people, I actually liken the way that they kill our careers in the workplace to how they kill us in our communities. And the best example and the most heartbreaking of all the heartbreaking examples I can give you is what happened to me. I liken it to what happened to George Floyd. And I warn you, the image you're about to see is disturbing. George Floyd was brutally murdered by a racist police officer, Derek Chauvin. But here's the thing. When Derek Chauvin carried out the act of killing George in his community, he was not alone. He had help. There were 3 other police officers on that scene. There was one who was standing up. He had created a wall between the allies who were standing on the sidewalk screaming in horror as they're watching this man be abused and killed, and Derek Chauvin, who was in the act of killing George and his community. But in addition to the police officer who created the wall of protection, you had an officer who was physically holding George's legs down. You had an officer who had his knee in George's back. And then you had Derek Chauvin, who had his knee on George's neck. So you had a total of 4 police officers all working together to kill George in his community. Now, the reason I bring this up is because of the 4 police officers who were on the scene that day, Derek Chauvin was the leader. He was the person in the highest position there. He was the one who was the most senior leader of the 4, who had the power, the influence, and the authority. So when he led even though some of those officers knew what was happening was wrong, and even one of them questioned it, they didn't stop helping him. When he led, they followed him. And they all aided and abetted this racist leader as they killed George in his community. So, you take that scenario where they kill us in our communities, and you move it on over to the workplace. You are a black person. You are working in your job. And yeah, there's some uncomfortable stuff going on around you. You know, you've got the coworker in the cubicle next to you who thinks your hair is unprofessional. Okay? And you got that unconscious bias going on down the hall. You got this person in the office across the way here who's giving you some microaggressions. But if that was all that we as black people were dealing with, we could handle that. We could handle the unconscious bias. We could handle the microaggressions. Because those things alone don't kill our careers. What kills our careers in the workplace is the leader, who is just like Derek Chauvin. They are a high leader in the organization. They have the power and the influence and authority. And even though they have those same biases, some are unconscious, some are intentional, and even though they have the ability to be a microaggressor, you know, that's not what kills our careers. This leader has the power, the influence, and authority to actually put actions behind those biases and behind those microaggressions to target you in your job and derail your position. And because of their power and their influence and authority, they inspire others, just like Derek Chauvin did. They inspire others in the organization, like HR. It's always HR. And sometimes your own employees, because they dangle a promotion in front of your own employees. So they inspire these other people in the organization to conspire with them. And now you're not just dealing with one leader killing your career, you're dealing with people. Just like George Floyd was. He was dealing with people who are all working together to kill your career in the workplace like they kill us in our communities. Both scenarios end in different types of death. The death in your community is permanent. But the death in the workplace leaves you in a perpetual state of racial trauma because it's repeated over and over and over again. As you run from company to company to company, looking for a place where you can not only survive working while black, but also thrive. Because many of us don't get an opportunity to thrive. Many of us don't get an opportunity to stay and retire. Many of us run from this company, eat up the savings we've accumulated while we're waiting for our next opportunity, only to run over here and have the same thing happen. So now that you understand what we're dealing with and why DEI programs don't address it, let me just take it down to another level and give you a couple of examples from my career, okay? As I told you, you have a racist leader who inspires others in the organization, and one of those people that they're inspiring to help kill your career works in HR. And before you know it, you've got multiple people who are all working together to put obstacles in your way to prevent you from being successful and making it across the career finish line in this company. One of those covert ways they do this is something I call being set up to fail. I just want to get a feeling real quick. How many of you feel that at some point in your career you had a boss who intentionally set you up to fail? Okay, just as I thought. So let me just tell you what that looks like in my career. So you heard me say that my career is in higher education, right? And that my background is in finance. I'm a number cruncher. So I'm going to take an example right out of my career of what happened to me. So you go to this company and, you know, in a college system, you have multiple campuses. So because you have multiple campuses, you're going to have duplicate positions. You're going to have a receptionist at each campus. You're going to have admissions advisors at each campus to enroll students. And you're going to have directors overseeing each of these departments. So I'm going to use the student finance department. If you are a college and you have 2 campuses and you need a director of student finance at each campus, so you hire a white director at this campus and a black director at this campus. Now, you don't want anybody accusing you of discriminating against black people. So even though, yes, there is a wage gap that needs to be addressed because there is a wage gap. But in my career in for-profit higher education, you know, they offer folks a decent salary. So they'll give you these 2 positions. They'll pay a wage over here, and this one may be less for the black person, but it's not going to be like a big stark difference. So you're going to give them both a comparable salary. During the onboarding process for the white director, you're going to give them a training that is spectacular. They're going to get all the information that they need that is vital to their success in doing this job. They're going to get the vital information that they know if you don't have this information, you won't be successful. So they're going to make sure you have all the information you need. But in addition to that, you're going to have the right tools. You know, this director, he's got this big responsibility. So he's going to have a state-of-the-art computer system, you know, 2 big monitors. He's going to have high-speed internet. He's going to have a laser printer in his office. So he's able to crank through his day, produce high-quality work seamlessly. Not only is he meeting the quantity of work he needs to produce, he's able to produce the quality because he's got the tools that he needs. In addition to those tools, he's got resources. So if he stumbles along the way, there are many different resources available for him. And then finally, if he, you know, starts feeling some kind of way about something, if he starts, you know, having issues with something, he's got mentorship because everyone on the leadership team above him looks like him. They can identify with him. They know what he's dealing with. They're concerned about him. So this white director has been set up for success right out of the gate, okay? Because they've got the right information, they've got the right resources, they've got the right tools, and they've got mentorship. Now, the same person who trained the white director now has to come on over here to my campus and train me. But guess what? Not only do they not give you all the information you need that is vital to your success, but my boss intentionally gave me the wrong information. They intentionally steered me in the wrong direction. They gave me the wrong information because they wanted me to make mistakes. And they were successful because with the wrong information, you are going to make mistakes. But it didn't stop there. Remember those wonderful tools, you know, high-speed internet, state-of-the-art computer, printer in the office? Over here at my campus, My computer is slower than dirt. I don't have 2 big monitors. I got one stinking computer that is slower than dirt. And yes, they have high-speed internet, but because my computer is so broke down, it can't handle it, so it's freezing all day long. How many of you have had to reboot your computer 4, 5, 6 times during the day because it freezes? Okay? It slows you down. But it doesn't stop there. Remember that nice little printer he's got in his office? I don't have the budget. That's what they tell you. We don't have the budget to give you a printer in your office, so you'll have to use the community printer. So I have to print my print jobs at the community printer and then walk across the campus to the shared area. Now, I don't know if any of you guys have used a printer that you share with other departments, but by the time you get there, your documents are lost, they're paper jammed, you know, you've got some of them, but you don't have all of them, and so you're running back and forth trying to reprint. And so because of all these obstacles, you're feeling some kind of way. You're asking for better equipment. They're telling you it's not in the budget, but you know, we'll look at it for Q3. Okay, so I want to talk to somebody because I'm feeling some kind of way now. I believe there might be some discrimination going on, but I'm on the EEOC website and none of this is in there. So I try to talk to somebody on the leadership team, but of all the people on that leadership team, the only black person in any kind of leadership position is me. I'm it. How many of you have worked in companies where you're it? You're the only. And so when you try to describe and explain what you're dealing with, these leaders can't identify with you. They don't understand. They think you're making excuses. And then they finally say the phrase that makes me cringe every time I hear it. Well, Jackie, maybe you need to evaluate whether or not this position is the right fit for you. So I am set up to fail with all these obstacles that are put in my path. And that's how covert racism works. Because it's almost impossible for you to prove that they trained you the wrong way, that they gave you subpar equipment, that there were no resources available for you and no one to help you. And so a lot of our people, we lose our jobs because as you're making all these mistakes and your quantity is not up to par, they're comparing you because you have the same title as this white director. And they're saying, well, he's able to do it with no problem. So, you know, obviously the issue is you. So they're comparing you to this person and they're documenting all the mistakes that you're making and your lack of productivity. And they're using that documentation that they've collected on you to justify firing you at the end of your probation period or demoting you. And like I said, a lot of these things happen to our people without us understanding why. That's how covert racism works. And as you can see, it does not fit into an EEOC bucket. And nobody's DEI trainings, nobody's addresses what we're really dealing with. Now, if you don't believe me, let me give you another example. I passionately call this the black workhorse. How many of you have heard that term? Anybody heard the term the black workhorse? Okay. All right, so let me tell you how covert racism works with the black workhorse. So, you may be working in your position. You know, in the first example, I used a brand new position. You come in to this new job. But with the black workhorse, you don't have to be new in your position. You could have been in this company 3, 4, 5 years. And there was a change in leadership. You know, things were going well for you for those years. But then there was a change in leadership somewhere up high. And somebody left because they had a baby, okay? Or somebody got a new job, and now they brought in a new leader who happens to be racist, and they've noticed you. So they want to get you out of your position, but they can't do it overtly, because with overt, easy to spot racism, you know, those are things that can be easily proved because it's easy to spot. So what happens is this leader gets others in the organization to conspire with them, and they say, I want you to offer that employee a promotion, okay? So they pull you into the conference room and they offer you a promotion, and you are excited. You're like, yes, I'm moving in the right direction. This is great, okay? So now you've got this promotion, and they say, okay, you know, here's your new salary. You know, this is the job we're going to have you do. This is the job description. And I want you to pay attention to all these bullets on this job description. You know, these are all the duties we want you to perform. And you're like, great, I can do this. But you need to pay particular attention to that last bullet on this new job description that says you're going to do all these duties and all other duties as assigned. Okay, so now you've been promoted and you're working in this new job that they've given you. But as the months go by, you're noticing something. In addition to all these jobs that they said they're going to pay me to do, I've now got this person's job added to my plate, and this extra big project added to my plate, and these extra duties added to my plate. And before I know it, my workload is so heavy that my back is about to break, or I fall to my knees, because I'm doing the job of 2, 3, sometimes 4 people. I'm not getting paid to do all this extra work, but now they expect me to do it. It's become part of who I am. This is why you see a lot of black people working late every night, working on holidays, working on the weekends. In my case, I was using my vacation days to try to keep up with this workload, because if you don't keep up with it, which is what they expect you to do, your job is at risk, because to them, they're going to get their money's worth out of you. They're going to give you this nice salary, but they're going to get their money's worth out of you. You're going to be working 70, 80 hours a week, doing a job that no other human can do, carrying a workload that no other human can carry, because to that racist leader, you're not human. You have been dehumanized. As a black person to this racist leader, you were designed to work harder. Twice as hard for half as much, longer hours. You can carry a load that no human can carry because you're a black workhorse. You know, all we've done is we've moved you from the field plantation to the corporate plantation. And none of that fits in an EEOC bucket. Okay? That's how covert racism works. And diversity, equity, and inclusion trainings don't talk about this. Now, you heard me say earlier that I suffered some psychological damage. And my boss is grateful she's still alive today. After my career was repeatedly killed by racists, and I contemplated homicide and suicide. But thankfully, God intervened. And God showed me that I wasn't going crazy, because like I said, I thought I was going crazy. And that through all the pain and suffering and trauma that I endured, that there was actually power in that pain. Power that I could use to help others who were just like me, that were experiencing the things that I was experiencing. But there was also power for organizations and for white people. 50% of the people who buy and read my book are white. And the reviews that I get from the white people are absolutely phenomenal. You know, they say they know that racism is wrong. They want to help. But because they've never experienced this, they don't know what it looks like, and they can't fight what they can't see. So they now have a way to see what up to this point has been unseen. But more importantly, sometimes white people get discouraged with us because they want to help. They don't know how, but they offer their help, and we tell them we don't want it. We tell them you can't identify with what we're going through. You don't know what we're going through. Sometimes we even accuse them of being part of the problem. And so it can be very discouraging for a white person who wants to help. But in order for them to help, they need to see and feel and smell our circumstances in a real and authentic way. And so that's what my book gives them. And when they come out of Ebony's 5-year journey, their ideas about what we experience working while Black are forever changed. Organizations whose leaders pick up my book, do you know what they do? They go back and say, we've got to change our DEI because it's failing Black people miserably. So I listened to God, and I pulled myself out of corporate America. And then like I said, when I first started, I called my Aunt Lou and I said, Aunt Lou, I'm going to write a book. I decided to write a book with my daughters who were going through the same thing that I went through, after realizing that this was a bigger problem than just me. I wrote a book inspired by true events. I couldn't get a publisher. Now, a white person writes the help and publishers are all on her. But a Black person who wants to actually write a book about what you're experiencing in the workplace, I couldn't get a publisher. Publisher said, there's not a market for that because there really isn't any racism going on in the workplace. So I took a chance. I went ahead and wrote this book with my daughters. I self-published, and the total investment I made in writing this book was $22. That's how much it cost for me to self-publish this book. And the only reason it cost $22 is because that's what I paid to have that cover over there designed, $22. That was my investment. $22. And because I don't have a marketing background either, you know, once the books were published, I really didn't know what to do with it. Because neither me nor my girls have a marketing background, so I just piled all the books into the trunk of my car, and I drove around to parks and to pop-up shops and sold them to literally anyone who would listen to me. Now here's the thing though. 7 months later, I don't know how, only to say that it was by the grace of God. But 7 months later, my book was an international best-selling. It was being read in countries all over the world, and people from places I didn't even know had Black people were contacting me. I mean, Finland, for goodness sake. New Zealand, Australia, Israel. You know, my biggest followers are in Canada, in the UK. And I was just blown away. And then Forbes found me, and Forbes said, you know, we want to talk to you about this book. So my book was featured in Forbes, and the New York Times just called me last week.
Yeah.
But more than that, my little book that I sold from the trunk of my car and paid $22 to publish was a #1 Amazon bestseller. It was also the recipient of the gold medal. I'm flying to Miami to pick up my gold medal. And it was and still is #1 on Goodreads Listopia for best eye-opening African American women's fiction. And #1 in books to build up your social justice literacy on racism in America. My book, which I'm giving them hundreds of them away free today to anybody who wants them, is called Hush Money: How One Woman Proved Systemic Racism in Her Workplace and Kept Her Job. And the reason this little humble book that cost $22 that I sold from the trunk of my car is spreading around the world like wildfire right now is because this is not just another book about systemic racism. For Black employees, and quite frankly, employees dealing with any type of discrimination, no matter what type it is, Hush Money is a roadmap. It's a survival guide that teaches you how to fight back against racism in your workplace, survive that battle, and keep your job, which is something that's never heard of. And the reason I tell people, you want to keep your job, you know, there's a saying we have in the Black community. We'd rather deal with the devil we know than go over here and deal with another racist devil we don't know nothing about. At least we know what you're doing here. So my book is going to teach you how to negotiate your own terms. And when it is time for you to run, you know, I have a motto. I don't run empty-handed. Don't run from these companies empty-handed. You set them up the way they set you up. My book teaches you how to do that. And then you take from their deep pockets. And then you run to the next company and you do the same thing to them when this stuff starts up all over again. Now, we began our time together discussing the races who said that Disney's Little Mermaid shouldn't, wouldn't, couldn't be Black. But I just want to tell you guys, this racism is not new. This is not new. 25 years ago, racists said the same thing to my Little Mermaid. This is my youngest daughter, Delilah. And racist kids told her she was the ugliest Little Mermaid they ever saw. They told her that the real Little Mermaid was not a tar baby. That's what they called my baby 25 years ago. And it nearly broke her spirit. So, racism has not changed in 25 years, and sadly, neither has many organizations' diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. So if there's any leaders in here listening to me today, if you truly want to create an environment where inclusion is not an illusion, you need to see, feel, and smell our circumstances, you need to read my book, to have your eyes opened, and then have the leaders on your team read it as well. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, it will empower you to evolve your DEI to match what's really going on. But number two, and I say this with a little bit of a sly smile, your employees are reading my book. And they're learning how to set you up if you are an organization that tolerates racism. And if you don't want to start going deep into your pocket, because as more people read my books, there's going to be more lawsuits. There's going to be more settlements paid. There's going to be more attention that you don't want as an organization. Use this as the catalyst to do what's right. And at this point, I do want to acknowledge all of the sponsors who made this event possible, who made it possible for me to be here to share with you today. Black Achievers, Big Trash Removal and Mauer, Northland Workforce Training Center and Buffalo Niagara Partnership, Agents for Advocacy, Mark, and Buffalo NAACP, Reverend Blue, National Action Network, Buffalo Niagara Chapter, Library Foundation of Buffalo and Erie County, Buffalo and Erie County Public Library, and last but not least, Miss Kimberly Johnson and Ladybug Sharon. I'd like to also extend a very special thank you to the amazing individuals and organizations who tirelessly worked behind the scenes to support me and this event in every possible way. You know, Joy, I give you much gratitude. Thank you. And I would also like to thank the many loving allies of the Black community on LinkedIn who heard about my visit here and sponsored hundreds of hush money books that are out there for me to give away free to anybody who wants them. And last, but certainly not least, I just want to thank you. Thank you for giving me your time today. You know, some of you rode buses, some of you, I heard somebody say they rode the train. You know, some of you drove and, you know, risked not finding a parking space, but you can. And so I just want to thank you for being here. And lastly, if anybody wants to talk to me, because I make it a point to talk to whoever wants to talk to me from around the world, all I ask you to do is make sure before you contact me that you've read my 2 books. Okay, I'm giving away the first one free, Hush Money, How One Woman Proved Systemic Racism in Her Workplace and Kept Her Job. The sequel to that is explosive, and I promise you, you will want to read the sequel. Don't be like the woman who's stalking the Amazon driver because she didn't buy it ahead of time. The sequel is called Hush Money, The Cost of Being Black in Corporate America. And it picks up literally where this purple book starts, and it tells an explosive, incredible story. So that's what I ask you to do. Once you've read those 2 books, you can call me, text me, email me, or I am really, really, really active on LinkedIn. I practically live there. You will find me there. And so with that, let me just ask you a question, and then we're going to go into our author talk and let you ask me questions. When I do book signings, because I am going to do a book signing out there for anyone who wants their book signed, I typically read a chapter or two, and my chapters are small. As you can see, this is a very small book. It's not thick at all, and it only takes a few hours for somebody to read it. Does anyone have any desire to hear me read a chapter or two?
Yes.
All right, Miss Kimberly. Then I can't hold the mic. Unless we want to scoot this over there, but I can just read right here. My chapters are short. The chapters are not long. So, chapter 1 is called Things Were Great in the Beginning. It was a chilly morning in the city of Austin, Texas, on the day my life was changed. I was sitting at the dining table with Mom, sipping a cup of coffee, and browsing the want ads in the newspaper as she read the headline news. Mom, a beautiful woman born in Shreveport, Louisiana, was 51 years old with a taller than average height, a slender physique, caramel colored skin as smooth as silk, and glistening green eyes. She had long, shiny black hair, dressed with a modest elegance, and had a personality that could charm a poisonous snake. Mom adopted me when I was born and named me Ebony to highlight the beauty she saw in my dark skin. And although I didn't look anything like her, she was an amazing parent to me and was great in so many ways. The want ads, on the other hand, were not so great. Jobs that I was qualified for and that also paid well were far and few between. And I was tired of working dead-end jobs that made it hard to make ends meet. As I wadded the want ads into a ball, Mom sensed my frustration, put down her newspaper, and placed her hand on top of mine. "You can stay long as you like, Ebony," she said with love in her eyes. "But don't worry. God has a way of working things out." Mom's words were encouraging, but it was her gentle touch that comforted me the most. And I was at a point in my life where I really needed comforting. At 28 years old, I was going through a divorce, living with Mom in her small one-bedroom apartment, and trying to get my son back from what was supposed to be a summer vacation in New York with his father. As I thanked Mom for her support, the phone rang. It was a call from a woman at the temp agency I had signed up with 2 weeks earlier. "Abram Career Institute needs a secretary," she said. "It's a temp position that pays $16.23 an hour, the equivalent to $35,000 a year. Are you interested?" "Heck yeah. That's a lot of moolah," I thought to myself before calmly verbalizing my interest. And that's where my story begins, with the call that changed my life in the best way and also the worst way. The call that began my 6-figure career in higher education and my descent into racial discrimination hell. When I hung up the phone, I was smiling from ear to ear and couldn't wait to share the good news with Mom. Mom was thrilled. "I told you God has a way of working things out," she said. "All you gotta do is believe." The temp assignment wasn't a full-time job and didn't have any benefits. So you're probably wondering why I was so excited. The reason is really quite simple. For the first time in my life, I had gotten my foot in the door with a company that had real career potential. Dave-run Career Institute was a popular for-profit college with multiple campuses located in the U.S., including several campuses in the state of Texas. I had seen Dave-run's commercials on television and even considered enrolling in one of their degree programs. Working in higher education, even as a temp, was a step in the right direction as far as I was concerned. In January 2012, my journey at Dave-run's main campus began, in the same city where I lived, and from the very first day, it felt like home. Everything from the environment to the type of work I was doing was amazing. I was in perfect sync with the chancellor, Dr. Hunter Hall, a professional, distinguished-looking man in his 50s, who exuded confidence and was as tall as a pro basketball player. He was a handsome man with tan skin, fashionably styled salt and pepper hair, an athletic physique, and eyes that were greener than an emerald. He also had a warmth and kindness about him that immediately put me at ease. Although Dr. Hall was the most powerful person on campus, he took me under his wing and treated me much like the father figure I'd never had. I developed an instant respect for him and used the computer skills I taught myself at a safe house for abused women to impress him. And impressed he was. He was amazed with my ability to manage budgets, prepare meeting minutes, and develop presentations, and he showed his appreciation every day. I enjoyed my job and planned to work for Dr. Hall and Abram for many years to come. After working on my temp assignment for 2 months, Dr. Hall called me to his office to meet with him. "You're the best assistant I've ever had," he said with a smile. "I'm the only one that reminds me of the Nubian queen I saw in a movie yesterday." "Thank you," I said with a slight giggle. "It's my braids, isn't it?" I had been styling my hair in dookie braids for the last 2 years because they were easy to do, and I always received so many compliments. "Yes, it's your braids," he said with a warm smile. Then he said he was going to buy out my contract with the temp agency and hire me permanently. "How does senior secretary sound?" he said with a grin. "It comes with a $5,000 raise." "That sounds amazing," I exclaimed as I jumped up and gave him a hug. When I left his office, I was on top of the world and couldn't believe how quickly my hard work had paid off. In a matter of months, I had a full-time job that paid $40,000 a year and came with excellent benefits, including 100% tuition reimbursement. I couldn't wait to tell Mom the good news, so I called her at work. "Mom," I exclaimed, "you'll never guess in a million years what happened." "You win the lotto, child?" "No, something better. Dr. Hall hired me full-time and gave me a $5,000 raise. I'm so proud of you, honey. God is good. I wish I could talk more, but gotta get back to them machines." I could feel Mom smile through the phone as she hung up and went back to work. Mom was a machinist and made $11 an hour, standing on her feet operating machines for 10 hours a day, 4 days a week. Standing for that many hours a day would be hard for anyone, but for Mom it was especially hard because of her age and health issues. Now that I had a permanent job that paid well, my hope was that I could eventually take care of her so she didn't have to work so hard. Shortly after hanging up with Mom, Dr. Hall called me back to his office. "I want you to start managing my incoming email," he said. "I get too much and there's not enough hours in the day to respond." The next day, we met with the director of IT, and Dr. Hall instructed her to provide me with access to his email account so I could manage it in a clandestine way. And even though she expressed concerns about providing me with access, she gave it to me anyway, and I began managing Dr. Hall's incoming email that day. I felt so important. I was privy to confidential executive level information, making important decisions on Dr. Hall's behalf, and doing my best to ensure that no one suspected that it was me and not Dr. Hall who was in control of his email account. Things were great in the beginning, but then rumors began to spread throughout the campus that it was little old me and not Dr. Hall who was creating the responses coming from his email. The rumor spread like wildfire and caused such an uproar that within days, dignitaries from Abram's parent company at corporate were at our campus interviewing employees. And when it was my turn to be interviewed, I was terrified. I felt like I was standing in front of a firing squad, both figuratively and literally. "How long have you been pretending to be Dr. Hall?" a man asked. "What else were you doing for Dr. Hall?" Another man rudely asked. "Did you knowingly violate our IT security policy?" a woman asked. The questions came from left and right, and although I responded honestly, their stoic demeanor made me feel like Dr. Hall's job wasn't the only one at risk. The corporate reps continued grilling me for about an hour, and I was sweating bullets the whole time. Then I was finally released, and as I walked back to my cubicle, all eyes were on me and I felt ashamed, even though I didn't think I had done anything wrong. After what seemed like an eternity, corporate emailed an organizational announcement to all staff and faculty, stating that Dr. Hall had resigned from his office and his position as chancellor for personal reasons. When I received the email in my inbox, I was crushed because Dr. Hall was the best boss I'd ever had. And as I drove home, I experienced a rainbow of emotions. I was sad Dr. Hall was gone, happy I still had my job, worried about reporting to a new boss, and hopeful my future with Abram would still be bright. 2 weeks later, Mia Kelly, Dr. Hall's replacement as the new chancellor, arrived on campus, and my hopes for a bright future at Abram were instantly dashed. Miss Kelly was the polar opposite of Dr. Hall. She was a statuesque woman in her 40s with cream-color skin, shoulder-length wavy blonde hair, and vivid blue eyes that could melt the polar ice caps. She was as tall as a runway model, wore fitted dresses with high-heeled strappy sandals, and had a way of looking at me that sent chills down my spine. Perhaps the biggest difference between Dr. Hall and Miss Kelly was that Dr. Hall liked and respected me, and Miss Kelly, on the other hand, despised me and made sure I knew it during our first one-on-one meeting in our office. "Listen, Agony," she said with a low, sultry voice. "Ebony, ma'am," I nervously replied, interrupting her. My name is Ebony." "Okay, Ebony. What are you, 4 feet tall?" "No, I'm 5'4". "Well, that's not tall enough, Agony. Wear higher heels. Towering over you makes my back hurt." I'm a petite woman by nature and was already wearing 2-inch high heels. So the idea that wearing higher heels would keep her from towering over me was laughable. And I didn't laugh because I thought she was joking. This was a mistake. "Oh yes, I heard about you," she said, donning a wide smile as she stared at me. "You're the reason my predecessor is gone." "That's not true," I declared with eyes as big as saucers. "I don't know where this is coming from. Have I done something wrong?" She didn't say a word. She just leaned back in her chair and continued staring at me like I was some kind of alien she wanted to explore. I didn't know what to say or do, so I sat there speechless and awkwardly staring back. After 2 of the longest minutes I had ever experienced, she motioned me to leave and I couldn't get out of there fast enough. The next few months were particularly difficult as Miss Kelly tried to break me. Like I was a wild horse she was determined and eager to tame. She humiliated me in meetings on a daily basis, degraded and dehumanized me with threats and fear, took away the computer duties I was good at and that I enjoyed, and reduced my job to getting her coffee and running errands. I'll never forget the day Miss Kelly summoned me to her office where she was entertaining visitors from a sister campus. When I walked in, all eyes were locked on me, and I could tell I was the topic of much conversation. "Meet Agony, my poor excuse for a secretary," she said as she flipped her hair back. No one said a word, and the silence in the room was deafening. As everyone stared at me, I was frozen, too humiliated to move or even say what my correct name was. I just stood there like a deer caught in the headlights. "Well, Agony, what are you waiting for?" she asked, raising her eyebrows at me. "Can't you see we need coffee?" At that moment, I found just enough strength to turn around and walk out before bursting into tears. Then I ducked into the bathroom and called Mom. She's trying to break me," I said in between sobs. I don't know how much longer I can last." "It breaks my heart to hear you hurting, honey," Mom replied, "but don't make waves." "What did I do to make her hate me so much?" You didn't do anything. We've been dealing with this crap our whole lives. She don't want you there because you're black, but don't quit. Don't lose your good job over this, okay?" Mom could tell I was still distraught, so she left me with one final thought to ponder. I know it seems like she's in control, but I promise you, it only seems that way. God's in control, and He knows what you're going through. Mom's reminder about God comforted me, so after hanging up the phone, I asked God to give me strength, then went to the break room to make coffee. Afterwards, I took the cups of fresh coffee to Miss Kelly's office, distributed them to each person, and quickly left. When I returned to my cubicle, I decided to educate myself on workplace harassment because knowledge is power, and I needed to know if there was anything I could do to legally make it stop. I did some research and discovered that, according to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, harassment consists of unwelcome conduct based on a protected class such as race or skin color. It becomes illegal when the conduct is so severe and pervasive that it creates a work environment that is intimidating, hostile, or abusive. Although Ms. Kelly had created a work environment that was intimidating, hostile, and abusive, the majority of her actions, from what I could tell, weren't based on a protected class and therefore were not illegal. And since I couldn't afford to quit my job, I continued reporting to her and suffering in silence for 10 long months. That is, until the day she summoned me to her office for what I knew was to be fired. So after taking my personal belongings to my car, I went to her office, sat down at her desk, and braced myself for the worst. "Agony," she said with a smug look on her face. "I hired a new secretary. And since I don't need 2 secretaries, I know, I'm fired," I said, interrupting her train of thought. I just don't know what I'm going to tell my son." "Son?" she asked as her ears picked up. "You have a child?" "Yes," I replied as my eyes filled with tears. "I'm trying to save enough money to get him back from New York." I didn't know that. You walk around here acting like everything is rainbows, bubblegum, and unicorns." I don't know if it was the knowledge that I was a mother, struggling financially, or had a son that touched Miss Kelly. But as I spoke, the smug look on her face disappeared before my eyes, and her icy heart seemed to thaw a little that day. Then she leaned back in her chair, crossed her toned legs, and sighed. "Ebony, you're not fired," she said.
We have an opening in the student finance department. If you want to transfer, we'll see how you do. It's a demotion. Your salary will be reduced. But if you want it, it's yours. I didn't know what shocked me more, that I still had a job, or that she finally said my name right. But as I sat there, tears began rolling down my cheeks as I silently cried. When I left her office, I went back to my cubicle and thanked God that I still had my job, because I was still making more money than I had made in previous jobs, even with the reduced salary. The next day, I transferred to the student finance department, where I was the only Black employee. My annual salary was reduced to $37,000, and my title was changed to student finance advisor. As I sat in my new office and reflected on my first year of employment, I could hardly believe how fast my dream job turned into a nightmare, simply because there was a change in leadership from a great boss to a horrific one. But now that I no longer reported to Miss Kelly, I was confident there would be nothing but sunshine and blue skies ahead of my career. Or so I thought. Thank you.
Okay, she's giving you a whole lot, right? She gave you a whole lot. So we really want to know if there's some questions. We're going to let her come down there and have a seat with me. And if you've got some questions, we do have a live mic here. If you want, you feel comfortable coming up and talking to her, speaking at the mic, or you can write it down on a piece of paper. There will be people in the aisles with paper and pen for you. You can write it down, and we'll get that questions asked, and we'll let Miss Jacquie take a load off and just talk like some girlfriends now, okay?